Connecting to the master node. We're working as ECT user only. So before we go for the next part, any questions from the hands-on, from the labs, anything pending? Okay. So let's talk about something called persistent volumes in Kubernetes. Persistent volumes and persistent volume claims. So it means PV and PVC in short. PV and PVC. So what are these persistent volumes and volume claims? You know, right? Like what is a volume? We have learned it. Like for data backup, for data storage or data persistency, we have something called Docker volumes, right? The same is the concept here. Like we'll have a volume. Volume is nothing but a storage, and where means it could be on the same cluster or else outside the cluster. The best practice is outside the cluster. It should be outside the configured outside the cluster, right? So this volume will be outside the cluster, and this would be mapped to some location inside the pod, right? Inside the container means inside the pod there might be some path like where www.html or else some log path which you want to take backup of. So this will be mapped to some path on the cluster, means some path actually outside the cluster, so that even though the cluster is gone, you still have the data backup. So some path is mapped. This is called volume. This is nothing but a directory. It could be on the cluster, outside the cluster. The best practice is to keep it outside the cluster. And this is how pod will be attached to the volume for data backup. But how do you attach the pod to the volume? Do you attach directly? The hierarchy is first persistent volumes are created by Kubernetes admins. Who is a Kubernetes admin? Kubernetes admin is nothing but who will work for managing, creating, maintaining the cluster, admin part of the cluster. Data of the backup and recovery of these volumes, configuration of the volumes will be taken care by this admin. So they'll create some volumes, right? And how do you attach that to the pod? So to attach that to the pod, we write the configurations in the pod. This is taken care by Kubernetes developer. Who is meant by Kubernetes developer? Some days back, I told you, right? There'll be nothing like, there'll be something like DEVOPS, development team and support team. Development team is who work from scratch to create the pipelines and all. If you're working on just providing a support, that's called Kubernetes DevOps support. Same is the case here. Developer meaning they work for application configurations. They work for creating objects like pod manifest, deployment manifest, service manifest. This is taken care by Kubernetes developers, right? So this is how these two work, Kubernetes developers and who know what size of volume, like what size of volume is needed for that, for their application. And which part of the application should be backed up. This details they'll know. So they'll create these configurations when they are creating pod. And they will also create persistent volume claims. Claim is nothing but an object through which you attach to PVC. Means PVs PV will be created, and whenever you create a pod, sometimes PVC will be created automatically, or else developers will be creating PVC. PVC will turn attached to PV. Pod will attach to PVC. This part is handled by developers and PV part is handled by admins. It's because there is no dependency. Admins, whenever they create a cluster or whenever they do these configurations, they'll create some PVs. And whenever you create a PVC, sometimes, like I told you, there are different objects. And whenever you create those objects, PVC will be automatically created. Means pod will be attached to PVC. And also, whenever PVC is created, it will search for the PVs available. Whenever it matches the type, means PVC will have some type and size of the volume. When they matches the PV type and volume and size, they gets attached, they gets bind to it. So you don't need to explicitly go and attach PVC to PV. You just create a pod, let's say you are a Kubernetes developer, or else you work for application configurations, right? You create the pod object, the pod configurations and all. And PVC would be created, which will attach to the available PV automatically. So this is how it works. Is this clear, everyone? Understood?
In PVC, in what the data they will be storing or application logs?
Whatever data you want to take backup of. Like in Docker container, what data we are storing in the volumes. It could be database data for backup, or else if you want to share some file, it could be that application document root location. The path could be anything, whatever you want to take backup of, whatever you want to have persistence, even though that pod is gone or lost.
Okay.
And PVC will attach to the PV with the size equal to or less than the PV. PV size should be equal to or greater than PVC. Then only PVC will attach. Means let's say PVC size is 3. Means we have created PVC with size 3 gibbs. It will attach to PV which is greater than or equal to 3. It will not attach to something which is less than 3. So it means we'll create some PVs, and whenever you create a pod and PVC will search for the PV which matches this criteria and gets binds to it automatically. Let us see the hands-on here. Here anyway, we'll create PVCs on the same cluster. Let me go with the demo. First, create some PV. Anyway, here entirely we are doing, because at times in some projects, everything would be done by the same Kubernetes team. So let us do everything from the scratch. Let me connect back. Okay, deployments we have. Let me create a PV. kubectl get PV. See, we don't have any PV. Let me create a PV. pv.yml. It is again the like another Kubernetes object, like kind is persistent volume. So see here, persistent volume, test PV. This is the type, local. Storage class, manually we are creating the PVs. You could also do dynamic. There are dynamic PV, so you can execute dynamic storage class. Access modes, read, write many. Host path. Host path means this is the path that is going to be on the cluster. Particularly, it will be on the worker node. Right? Because your pods run on the worker node, this should be on the worker node. We'll create this path. So that is one volume. You can have any number of volumes. As of now, I'm creating one volume. Let me create this kubectl create -f PV. Okay, test PV is created. Get PV. Right? So here one read write mode status is available. It's not yet bound. Now we can add the pod configuration or else first create the PVC. Before that, this path should be available on the worker node, right? Let's connect to the worker node. On worker node, because your pod runs on the worker node, not on the master, if you remember. So I'm connecting it from the browser. I have given /mnt data, right? So let's go to root, mount data. See, this is already there, but it doesn't have data. I'm creating this data directory. This is the path I have given as a mount point, but we don't have anything. Okay. Now let's create the PVC. Let's create the PVC. PVC.yml. Another object, it is persistent volume claim. And okay, first let me add this. Storage and the type should match. See, storage is one, type is local for PVC. Here also it is a size, I have given it as 1, and storage, sorry, this one type, where is the type is local. Here it's not mentioned, but storage class manual means type is local. Let me create PVC now. Apply -f PVC. PVC is created. You can check PV. This time you will see the difference. Do you see it's bound to this claim? Where is this claim? Just now we created it. Do you see that it's bound? Status is bound. Here it says PV is attached to this PVC. Okay, fine. Now, how do you attach this PVC to the deployment object? Let's go to the deployment object. Name of the volume. PV storage. Right? Persistent volume claim. So here you write the claim name to map it. Claim name is, we have given the name as test PVC, right? So define the volume, like you define container, give some user defined name PV storage and attach it to the claim. Okay, fine, I have configured and referring to the volume. But which path inside the container, right? That's where you define this PV storage. Here I have given PV storage, but what is that PV storage? Which path inside the container? That is being defined here as volume mounts. Volume mounts, mount points. So what is a mount path? Mount path is, let's say this is a PHP image, so it should be var www HTML. Okay, and the name is PV storage. By the way, PV storage is this volume, but PV storage is attached to test PVC. Now, MNT data will be attached to var www HTML. Understood this, everyone? Any questions? Is this mapping clear? This is volume is attached to PVC. This volume is nothing but MNT data. This PVC is attached to PV, which is configured on MNT data. That's all. Let me save this.
There is a
I
typo. There is a typo in claim. Claim
there
name
is
test. Claim name test.
yeah, thank you. Right. So PVC is attached to PV. Now we are trying to attach this to this. Before that, we have created ingress. We are doing this on path-based routing. If you remember, it's on /cart/products. Where is the ingress service? Get service minus A means it will show services in all namespaces. See, these are all different namespaces. And my service is this one, right? 32305. Okay, let me go there. 32305. Take any IP. 32305/cart. Right? This is the one I deployed actually. And /products is V2. Correct? Is the deploy V2 image. Is it product or did we remove something? Temporarily, see, this is again in the other important way of troubleshooting. This might be an interview question also. 503 service temporary available means what do you check first? How to resolve, how to fix it? First of all, you should describe your ingress rules, isn't it? First, check the ingress rule. /products means service. See, this is the problem. There are no backend pods. Are you getting me? For service, one is attached to the backend. Endpoints are there. For this, there are no endpoints. Why there are no endpoints? Check it out. kubectl get service. Service 2 is there. Get EP of service 2. There are no endpoints. Why there are no endpoints? Check it. kubectl describe service 2. See, no endpoints and the label is app v2. What happened to those pods? kubectl get pods. Oh, we don't have deployment 2 at all. Obviously, service 2 is not handling any endpoints and you are not seeing this. Are we clear? So this is how you should troubleshoot. First, the ingress object, ingress rules, then whether service is attached to the backend pods or not. It's not means then you should troubleshoot, describe this service and see whether the labels are incorrect or whether why it is not attached to those pods. Okay, anyway, one is enough for us now. My intention is, okay, we are having this. So I just want to replace this with another file. We have MNT data right here. Here, actually this is attached. I did not apply that change at it. Our volume is created. PV, PVC are created, but I did not attach this to pod it. I did not map it yet. So let me create some file here. Index.html. This is sample file. Right? So this is what we are seeing. Right? Okay, now when you apply this configuration, your pod should be having that page. I did not apply the configuration yet. I'll just show you get PV. These are attached, but this is not attached to pod yet. Already I have some pod. Let me describe the pod or else let me get into the pod. I'll show you. Now kubectl exec -it, the pod name. this pod name, bin bash. See where WHTML, I got this PHP page, right? That's what we are seeing, two text boxes. Now, here, that new index.html should be replacing it. And we should see a different page. Am I making sense? Get PV, get PVC, get pods. Now let me apply the change. So instead of this, I should be seeing that sample page which I have placed on the volume. Now let me apply the change. kubectl apply -f deploy one.yml. It's configured. Now you see the pods. See, old pods are terminating because we made some changes to the configurations which are created 23 hours back. They were terminating and new pods are coming up if you notice. Do you see? New pods are coming up. Now because new pods are coming up, got it now? Right? That's how you can even share some files or backup of the data, whatever you want. Now, if you get into this, you will see a different file, obviously. This is the new pod with the new volume configuration. It would be very clear that you will see index.html, not that PHP page, right? That's a data persistency. And another thing is, you can also describe the pod to see the configurations. Describe a pod. Here you can see, where is it? So this one. You right? Got it, everyone? Understood? Here you can see the mount points. This is a default one and this is the one for our PV storage. You see the claim configurations as well. So that is about PV and PVC. Any questions? Till now, we have learned these objects. Deployment object, of course, pod object initially, service, ingress, config map, secret, daemon set, persistent volumes, persistent volume claims. Did I miss anything? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Different 9 Kubernetes objects we have covered, right? Today we have learned PV and PVC. Now we have learned them by applying them individually. Now we will deploy an application which uses all these objects. Let us take our PHPDB, the microservice application. I would like to deploy it on the cluster using all these objects which we have learned till now. So first, let us deploy each microservice. First PHP, then DB. Now tell me what are all the objects we need to deploy this PHP. I want to hear from you.
PHP software deployment.
We have this image, right? We have this image. Just today we deployed. 1 second. This Docker image is already there. Our PHP image is already there. Now I want to deploy this in a cluster. So what are the Kubernetes objects we need to deploy this image? We already did that actually. So already we did. There is nothing new apart from that. I'm just asking what are the objects we need to deploy this PHP image. This is a microservice, right? So I'm calling.
For PHP image, pod services.
Deployment, right? Pod means we will deploy
Deployment services.
object. And then
Ingress.
Yeah, ingress also.
ingress is not mandatory, but yes, okay, ingress is common for both. Okay, we'll have same ingress. Then, of course, yeah, in real time we deploy it through ingress only. We don't deploy service directly. For common ingress for both of them, common ingress service for both. One ingress object with ingress rules. Of course, service object, this should be cluster IP. We should have a service for PHP, which would be cluster IP, ingress, which should be load balancer, but in our case, we'll have it node port for the restrictions we have. And
then config map secret.
Why do we need config map for PHP? Where do you?
So if it is from local GitHub, private GitHub.
But why do you need config map? What is in private GitHub? Try to answer them. I'm asking the questions for your understanding. What is there in private Git? Oh, you mean image to pull the image from private Docker Hub?
Yes, for pulling the image
Docker
from
Hub. To pull the image from Docker Hub, yes, we need secret, but we don't need config map. Yes, we need secret. And of course, this is also common for both the images. We need a secret to pull from private registries, right? Let's say for registry. Okay, one secret for registry. Okay, one common secret. But config map we don't need, but you may use it to set the database name, kind of, if you want, you can. But we have configured all of that at the Docker image level, right? So in our case, we don't need it. But in case if you need to set some environment variables, because do you remember in our PHP, we set environment variables like password, and one more environment variable, database name, isn't it? My database. Those you haven't set in your image, or else if you want to override, you may use config map. But for now, we don't need it here. That too for database, not for PHP, if you remember, right? That comes in here when you deploy database.
Yeah, database.
Name, database password. Password, we can use secret. Okay, here I'll use another secret for DB password. Of course, before that, it also needs a deployment object.
Yeah, deployment service.
Yes. Service will be internal cluster IP, and anyway, that will be added to the ingress. And then secret
and PVC.
PV, yes, correct. This is a practical example for PVs to back up the SQL database content, PV, PVC. Right? So how many objects? For PHP alone, we need deployment, service, ingress, secret, four objects, right? Let me write it more clearly so that it will help you for recap also. PHP DB. PHP, we need deployment object. We need a service object. We need ingress, secret, which are common, ingress and secret to pull the image. Image pulls, common for both. These two objects would be common for both. And now for DB, these are specific to PHP. Now let's write specific to DB. DB, again, we need deployment object, service object, of course, cluster IP, and then secret for DB password. And then volume claim. Correct? Are we good? Anything missing? You may use config map if you want also, but as of now, I'm not using config map. This is optional. Optional in the sense, not optional for every application. In our case, because we already configured it. So for PHP, this cluster, this would be of type cluster IP. This service is also will be of type cluster IP. So 2 objects here, 2 objects, common objects, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objects here. Total almost 9 objects. So shall we go and deploy this one by one? We have learned all of them individually. Now let us apply them. I mean, let's put together and apply this application. Right? Let's begin. First, I'll
This you
clean up.
want
Go ahead.
Yeah,
please.
this ingress why we need in DB also. I'm not getting that point.
DB will
PHP,
not. DB will not. Okay. Only one service we want to expose and we have path based. This one you can ignore. Only for ingress as of now. Only for PHP. We don't need it.
okay.
We need only secret. Okay. Now clear?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Get deploy. Delete it. Delete deploy. Deploy one. Get service. Let me clean up everything. Delete service, service one. And then volumes also let me clean up. Pods are gone. PV is bound, but still they are bound. First, you have to delete the pod, then PVC, then PV. In the reverse, you have to delete PVC, test PVC. It is deleted. If you delete it and if you see, it is gone. PV will be status is released. It's not bound. Do you see that? Means it's available for another PVC to get attached. Delete PV, test PV. Deleting, creating, these commands are simple in Kubernetes. You don't need a separate learning. You will get used to it. Creating, getting the object, creating the object, deleting the object, type of the object, name of the object. But the concepts are the ones where we need a focus. Okay, it's all cleared up. Now let's first create a deployment, a service, and deploy PHP first. Okay. Also, okay. I am creating a directory to put all of this PHP data. PHP manifest files goes in here. And for PHP, I'm creating a file called web.yml. Here I am going to place everything related to PHP. Means 2 objects, deployment object and service object. I'm just going to place. We can put everything in the same manifest. That's what I'm doing. See, deployment, 2 objects, Docker key, which we created yesterday, image name, perfect. Service. Service, you can use node port, or else if you want, make it a cluster IP. Let's make cluster IP and exit via ingress. Cluster IP. If it is cluster IP 80, target port. Okay. So you cannot access directly. I am creating this. I have placed one more thing. Everything you can place in the same file, but this is not good practice. But yeah, just because there are only 2 objects, I have added this way for better understanding. Deployment object, service object, separated by 3 hyphens. Now, kubectl apply -f. Okay. So kubectl get deploy get service. I want to do, oh, I did not remove the service too. Okay, delete the service 2. Okay, anyway, service 1 is mapped, but I want to modify this one ingress. Path, I would like to give a better name. Here, if you want, it's PHP, right? Let me give as web or something like this. /web. Service 2, we don't need it all. I can remove that rule. But let it be. We are not using that anyway. ing. So change should be applied. Get ing. Describe ing. Describe ing new. Yeah. See, it's web change. Now, here, I will not say anything on the cart because that path is not at all found. Web. Perfect, right? But backend is not there. It won't save the data. Now, what to do now? What next? DB deployment, right? So let's go to PHP folder. I have this. Let's first create the secret to database password, to store database password. Secret. So secret is created, MySQL password, and the root password value is password, right? Applying -f. Okay, here you can see it's this one, secret is created. Okay, let me show you, sorry. Let me go through once again. I think we already learned it, so I just created. This is how we created earlier, right? This is the key and this is the value. You may put encrypted value or directly also, fine. If you want, you can convert into base 64 and use it. I have used directly. You can do that as well. Right? So now let's create some volumes. Secret is created. Already Docker registry secret is there. Ingress is there. Okay, let me show you this. Okay, PHP thing is done. Right now, this ingress secret are already there. Now deployment. We should create this deployment service. First of all, I have created this service. Secret. Deployment service should be created. PVC should be created. So let us do that. First, let's create PV and PVC. Then we'll create deployment object and service object. And here, like as many number of replicas you have, you can create those many. Anyway, I'll create one PV for now. PV of MySQL.yml. And here I'm going to put it in the home easy to user path. See, home easy to user MySQL. This path should be on which node? Will it be on master node or worker node? Worker node means wherever your pod runs. Right? First, here it should be here. Home easy to user. Let me go to easy to user. You may give any path. Here I have given home directory, MySQL one. It's not there, it will create it. So I'm not creating it beforehand. So now create the PV. Create -f PV. Get PV. See, PV is created and status is available. Now create PVC. PVC is equal. Same object like we created for the sample one. Everything is same. And the size is 1 gigs, which is less than PV. PV is 5 gigs. This is 1 gig, so it should get attached. -f. get PV, get PVC, right? So it's bound, status is bound. Okay. Now the leftover
Apply and create, both the statements are same.
create is for the first time you can use create.
Uh,
Apply can be used even from the first time. Create can be used only for the
yeah, you have already reminded. Thank you.
So now the leftover things are deployment object, service object, right? In the deployment object and service object, I should configure that volume mount. So let me create db.yml, another manifest where I'll create both deployment and service. And it should be Docker key, SQL, and we'll set the environment variables from the secret and the volume mounts. So let me copy this. These files are available on the GitHub also, or in the Google Drive as well. Because it's nothing new, we are putting them together. Service objects, deployment objects, we have already created them. Just placing them together. I think I copied volumes. Deployment object. It's a deploy to. Labels are MySQL and just checking the service ones. Okay. Coming back. So this is the point, volume mount. MySQL store. Like earlier, I gave given name as PV storage. I have given the name as MySQL store. Persistent volume claim. So it is attached to claim. Claim is internally attached to PV. Right? So this is the image name, container port, environment variable, root password is set from the secret, right? Secret key reference and the key. So that secret should be set to password. And volume mounts. This is how we bound the var lib MySQL where the SQL data is present. Is that making sense? Same like we did in an earlier example, but now we are using an example where the microservices work together. And service is cluster IP. We are not doing any port forwarding. See, service name is MySQL. It's not an ingress. If you want, you can put on ingress, but you don't need to map it in the ingress. Means you can use service too. You don't need to map it in the ingress. That is also fine. Any questions? Are we good to apply this? This part you should focus, which is new part. This part we have learned yesterday, mapping secret, but this one. Okay, let me apply this. kubectl get deploy. Deploy to is created. Get pods. See DB2, it's a DB pod is still coming up. It's in a container creating state. Now it came into running state. Do you see that? Means volume, if you see earlier there is no folder, but see MySQL one is created. And do you see all the database data is backed up onto the volume. And now if it tries to save the data, let me refresh. If it tries to click submit, because it's path-based routing, it's not working, I believe. It should be configured second service. Whenever it is hitting next, it's trying to find some other path. That path is not available. So on ingress, it's not showing. Let me access it directly. Or else maybe after saving, we don't know the path to configure it. So what I'll do is web. Let me make it a load balancer. node port. $30,001. Get service. Okay. So now I'm sorry. This should be on 30,001. This is working perfectly. Ingress, it's not supporting this one. Few more changes are to be needed if we use it on Ingress. Web, we have configured it on web. Maybe that part should be configured for the service as well. Because it is working on submit operation, right? It's actually not service to MySQL. Apply -f ing. And this is on Ingress. Oh, I did not apply this change. Apply -f ing. We'll check on this one. Okay, for now, use a node port service. We'll check on how to get it working with Ingress. Any questions from anyone? Okay, we'll see this. But yeah, this is the one. This one. So all the components were deployed, multiple components wherein we have deployed this microservice application and they're working together. Is this much clear for everyone? Any questions? We just put all these objects together, that's all. Nothing new today, except those volumes. Any questions? Are we clear?
Okay.
So this is about the PHP deployment wherein we created the deployment objects and all. And here, if you see this deployment object for database, like if you see every pod, if you take any pod, let's say you have 2 pods, SQL pods. Okay, let's assume we are having 2 SQL pods. Let's suppose from the UI, some user submitted some data. Let's say that hit the service one, right? So, I mean, that hits the service one, and let's say that's a submit data. So insert query triggered and data is submitted here. Let's say another user is using to view the data or read the data. Let's suppose that view hit the SQL2 pod, second pod. Will it work? Because data is stored here and they are viewing, their view request came to SQL2. It means the whole point is, in this particular case, both the pods are not same. Meaning there are something called stateful applications, like all the database applications, message queue services. Such applications are stateful applications. Means the particular action is dependent on the previous state. Like you are viewing, you should hit the same pod, not a random pod, right? So even though you deploy it to deployment object where all replicas are same, for stateful sets, they should be deployed in a such a way that every pod is unique and every pod will have some identity of its own. So how is that possible? How to deploy stateful application? That's where comes something called stateful objects. We will look into this stateful objects in the next session. That's a bit advanced part. We shall take it up in the next part. Complete your hands-on till this much and we shall continue from here. Any questions from anyone?
See, any indentation issues, there means how to fix that? Any easiest way?
Okay, actually, this is YAML, right? So it will show you here itself, like clearly it will show you spec dot, this is error kind of, it will clearly show you. Still, if you want, as it's a YAML, you can use something called YAML lint. There is something called YAML lint where you can paste your file here and click on go. So it will show you any syntax errors if you have.
Well,
It's good. Let's say, see, line number 3, column 1. Here it is showing red. But yeah, this is the one which is indented incorrectly. For YAML, indentation, spacing are important. Right?
yeah, okay.
If no questions, we'll close here and we'll continue in the next session. All right then. Thank you all. Good day. Bye
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.